One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Delusions of Grandeur. I'm one of your hosts, and today we're going to go on about a freaky film, where it is from the year 2000. It is directed by Mary Harron, and it is called American Psycho. So I'm just going to go into a small synopsis of film that IMDb says, and then we'll go around and get everyone's first impression. So, a wealthy New York City investment banking executive by the name of Patrick Bateman hides his alternative psychopathic ego from his workers and friends as he delves deeper into his violent, hedonistic, and so, let us go over to you, Jake.
Okay.
What? I don't often have you go first, so let's start with you. What did you think of Americans?
Well, this was not a first watch. I cannot honestly swear to it that I've only seen it once before, but I feel like I have. I know I saw it a while back. It might have been college. It's a while ago. I may have seen it since then. I thought I owned it, but I couldn't find a copy. But I, of course, watched it again for this. I think the first time I saw it, I was interested but relatively unimpressed. I was like, what the hell did I just watch, sort of deal. But I couldn't, I knew even then the praise that has been heaped on this movie. And so I was kind of like, that was good. But this time around, I watched it more directly, having had time for it to simmer in the mind and all that kind of stuff. And more directly watching it as a potential, I watched it as a potential satire more than anything else. And there are people who call it an out-and-out comedy. I'll call it more of definitely a dark satire.
I'd agree with that.
And I love the Beans and Franks there. That's good times. But
something our main character would not eat.
Probably not.
Or would he?
There are some things about this one that have gotten a lot of controversy and some things that have gotten a lot of good press. It is one of the films that put Christian Bale on the map as a force to be reckoned with. And so it's got a lot going for it. I was very entertained, but also kind of disturbed. I won't lie, there were parts I didn't exactly watch closely. But from what I'm hearing of the book, though, this one puts me in mind of a movie that came out the year before, which was Fight Club.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Whatever.
Well, okay. Well, let me just finish my thought, and then you can launch into yours if you want. To me, Fight Club, the movie, was a wonderful satire, and I loved it. Fight Club, the book, sucked, and I hated it. And from what I've heard of the difference from Bret Easton Ellis's novel to this film, it followed a similar trajectory from book to film, from what I've heard. Dane, you could probably speak more on that. But
yes, I can.
If it's like that, then I probably would not care for the book. But we'll see. But anyway, that's my first thought.
I don't think you'd be too into the book because the book is much more explicitly graphic.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Like
I was
wildly
say
so.
that it makes the movie look like a cakewalk.
Yeah,
it really does.
The book has such extreme graphic violence in it that there were moments when reading it I had to put it down.
Exactly.
Well, not only extreme graphic violence, but also like outright like pornographic,
Right.
descriptions of what's happening, and then mixing that with the explicit violence, and it's like, there's a reason why in Australia why they had to sell copies.
So like that whole pain and pleasure discussion from earlier.
Well, Jake, I'll take it like one step further. I'm
What's
doing
that?
Hellbound Howard right now for my YouTube channel,
Mhm.
and some of the very graphic descriptions and stuff in Hellbound Howard,
Mhm.
you would not be able to handle. Trust me.
I can imagine. I was fine with just Hellraiser. I've seen it. I put it behind me.
Well, we talked about
Sorry, I'm
Sallow
laughing at
several
backgrounds.
we talked about Sallow several years ago. I had not read at that time. I had not read the 120 Days of Sodom book, but I subsequently went and read it. And let me tell you, the movie is the Care Bears compared to the book. The book is infinitely horrific, and that's saying a lot. So, point being that the power of the imagination can, in fact, get you more squeamish than not.
Well, one part of my point. What?
Jake, when my YouTube my video comes out this time next week,
Mhm.
just watch what I have to say about Hellbound Heart, and you'll
Good
get
times.
your opinion on it.
Good times.
And by the way, Mo, what the hell with the background?
Kim, what was your first impression of
Oh my god, I saw this in college. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm gonna be honest here. I I grew up with Christian Bale. Empire of the Sun, but most importantly, Disney movies.
Oh, Newsies.
Yes,
Newsies.
I love Newsies.
Swing Kids, and Little Women. And
Yeah.
so, of course, I was like, oh my god, he's a heartthrob. I liked him more than Leonardo fucking DiCaprio. I hated Leonardo DiCaprio. And Titanic did not make me like Leonardo DiCaprio.
And Leo almost got this role apparently.
Yeah, well, it was
exactly.
it was gonna be Oliver Stone directing, Leonardo DiCaprio as Patrick Bateman, and it was gonna have Cameron Diaz playing the Reese Witherspoon part where Evelyn.
Oh God. Okay, so yeah, so it's much better. Anyway, so when I watched it, I'm like, no, not my Christian Bale from Newsies. no, because I was a kid when I saw Newsies. So okay, all right, this is different. And then it became a fucking comedy because it gets to a certain point where I'm like, okay, this shit ain't happening. It's all in his head, or this movie is like fucking with us. I'm not really sure. But the decadence, the excess of the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
I did not grow up with that. We grew up poor. When I was in the 80s, we lived in Louisiana, and we were poor as fuck. And it wasn't until after my dad died that we had a windfall of life insurance money and almost like benefits from the military, because my dad was still in the military when he died, that we got moved up to another income bracket, I should say. And I'm like, okay, so this is how like suddenly other people live. But I still did not know that decadence of the 80s.
Nah.
This is one point when Brandon and I were rewatching the movie the other night, and I was like, the guy was like, oh, it was like 500. It's like, oh,
that's not bad.
I was like, and I said, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I was like, hold on. There's 4 guys, 500. How much fucking money was, And then I realized that Brandon and I had kind of, this is going to sound so snobby. Oh, shit. But we're talking about the money we spent for our anniversary dinner. And, well, what if we were to do that every week? How much we did this, did that?
And Manhattan prices.
Well, okay. They don't know what we spent for our anniversary dinner. That was Manhattan prices. So, like, what can we do?
Well, I'm saying that on the regular.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We were talking about like week by week. Like, this particular restaurant would work for our budget. We did the money and how I did that. And I said, oh, this will work. And I stopped myself and said, God damn it. I sound like Patrick fucking Bateman. Because I was echoing someone.
And what do you bet those assholes left a 5% tip?
Oh my God, yes!
If they left a
I
tip.
thought the same
If they
thing.
left. Yeah.
If they left a tip at all. Like,
If they left. Yeah.
Besides typing loud as fuck, someone's also, like, echoing.
Yeah.
But I was like, yes, these guys are such fucking assholes. Like, you got Patrick Bateman, who at one point his fiance, quote unquote, says, your dad practically owns the company. You can do whatever you want. And he's like, I want to fit.
Because I want to fit in.
Thank you. And I'm like, so his dad clearly is
one of my favorite lines. One of the many, but like Annie Leibovitz. We'll get Annie Leibovitz. Patrick, we should do it. We should do it.
Dane, I can do it better.
Do what?
Dane, do it better. Annie Leibovitz. We can get Annie Leibovitz. Patrick, we should do it.
Do what?
We should get married.
Get married.
Your dad basically owns the company.
You hate that.
Tell me
you hate that job. You hate that job anyway. I don't know why you just don't quit. Because I want to fit in.
Yeah.
No. Merry Christmas, Patrick.
Is the pig. Merry Christmas, Patrick.
She puts the antlers on him, and he just looks so miserable.
Yeah.
I've been here the whole time. You just didn't see me.
And
I love Reese Witherspoon in that fucking role because she was annoying, but she was exactly what you would expect him to be engaged to. This upper class, very good on paper kind of girl.
This came out the year after election, and it's really easy to think of this as Tracy Flick in 5 years.
I can see that. Well, so it's interesting. A couple interesting things about. So the movie came out in 2000. It was already seen as kind of a period piece, even though at that time the 80s were not that much. They weren't that far in the past. But by that time, the 80s had acquired enough of its own.
Okay, so Dane, I'm going to stop you right there because I still
haven't. Go ahead.
Let me just say, I was in college when this movie came out, as was David, Jake, my husband, probably Mo too. I actually have siblings that were what?
No, I think I was I might have been like in 8th grade or 9th grade or something like that.
So like the target age.
I thought you were
Nah, I'm like 10 years younger than you guys, I think.
The target age, indeed.
Okay, so
for
my
kids.
brothers were teenagers and early 20s in the late 80s. So I knew a lot about the 80s. I kind of grew up with that shit. And my parents, even my dad before he died, they used to rant about the rich. They don't fucking care. One scene that stands out for me in this movie was Patrick at the beginning of the movie. He's the homeless black guy. He's like, "Why don't you get a job?"
You reek of shit. Do you know that?
Exactly. You smell like shit. And he's like, "I lost my job." Not only does he kill the guy, allegedly kill the guy, because remember, but he kills the fucking dog. I'm like, what
the thing you never do. So,
at least he didn't kill the kitten.
Yeah, that's true. As Joe Bob Briggs would say, you kill as many people as you want, but you never kill a pet. People get upset.
Or children. Well, here's the thing. When that movie came out, when American Psycho came out, there was a lot of Lifetime or TV movie of the weeks about these rich, white kids getting away with, rape or murder and other shit
girls
like
with golf clubs. I remember that one.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the late 90s, early 2000s. And then you had American Psycho, you had Christian Bale playing a character, and again, Christian Bale, Empire of the Sun, Newsies, Swing Kids, Little Women, and other roles he had to that point, and you're like, hold the fucking phone. You know, the guy that every preteen girl was like, oh my God, Lori. Oh my God, Jack, whatever Newsies. You know, every girl, especially girls who love little Women, panted after Christian Bale. He was
Oh
Lord.
yeah.
And it's
Well,
like,
and he was in Henry V as well, the Kenneth Branagh one.
Oh, well, yeah.
was he?
Yeah, he was still a boy at the time, but he was the young boy character. That would have been after.
I still haven't seen that.
That was after Empire of the Sun, but before Newsies.
Yeah.
Okay, that was before I fell in love with Shakespeare. Okay, never mind.
There's never, it's never too late.
I was 10 when my teacher Shakespeare.
Let us go to Dustin. Dustin, what was your first experience with this film?
Well, it's a little bit of a long story, but that's never stopped anyone here. So,
Dustin, shush.
So anyway, so I first heard about this movie in undergrad, and somebody was like, "Oh, I think you'd really like this," and I wasn't really a horror guy yet, so I didn't really pay attention to that. And then I saw it shortly after I graduated, and I really enjoyed it. So this is one of my favorite movies. Maybe a bit less so now that I'm older. But so I first saw this kind of on my own, and I'm trying to remember exactly how I felt. It was a very difficult movie to process at first, because it rides that line between, I mean, it is a satire, but you could also watch it like as a straight horror movie too. So, I mean, it's got a lot of room for interpretation. And after I saw it for the first time, I read the book, and the book is radically different. The book is very graphic and extreme, so much so that I had to put it down after some of the big moments that there was no way they would be getting into the film.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a miracle that they got the film made in the way that they did.
Very true.
Yeah, Mary Harron, like nobody else could have. I don't think anybody else could have done this movie.
So going over to Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about your first experience with this film?
Well, there's unmute yourself, Brandon.
No, I thought you were saying something, so I muted myself. So for me, it's a different animal, I guess. I saw it also in college, around grad school. I didn't like it when I first saw it. I thought it was pretentious and confusing, and I just didn't like it in general. And I watched it again in the mid-2000s because it kept being suggested as something to learn off of when it was around the time Dexter came out. I remember that because it was they had said these are ones to look at for good antisocial personality disorders. But as I said with Dexter, that's bullshit. And I will tell you why later, but I do say that is. And I have actually, for once, I can say I have the expertise to lay down my actual argument this time. But yeah, I saw it this time, and coming from it from a different angle, I liked it a lot more this time. I was able to identify what was going on with the characters better, get a better idea as to what's going on in the heads of the characters, and looking at it not from, okay, this guy is supposed to fit in this box here as a diagnostic clinical study, which is how I originally watched it,
Yeah.
I can look at it and say, well, maybe that I'm looking in the wrong box. Maybe it's not that box, but the box next door. and thinking of it that way, it really did fit a lot better. So I will say this, which goes against a lot of people's contemporary opinions. American Psycho is not a story that best fits antisocial personality. American Psycho.
Someone's at the front door.
Yeah, hang.
Well, American Psycho is a story that best fits narcissistic personality disorder, which are close but not the same thing. and that's
you know what scene I'm gonna bring up later on. We talked about this actually when we were watching it. The sex scene with him and the first sex scene between him and strippers.
Oh yeah, there's a lot psychologically
legendary.
I could lay down on this basic thing. A lot of cool stuff there that definitely lends it towards that to show what's going on in this person's head and the psychology that you see.
Was it Uber Eats thing?
All right. What about you, Mo? What was your first impressions of this movie?
I thought it was pretty cool. I saw it definitely like in later half of high school. I didn't see it when it was new at all. It had been recommended to me a few times. A buddy of mine was a big fan of it and the book. It's pretty good, I mean, I guess it probably doesn't hit home with me as much as some of you guys. I mean, I enjoy scenes from it as a whole. It's like a movie I think loses a little bit because of the whole, is it real or not thing. Like that bummed me out and still does. Other than that, though, it's got some crazy good scenes in there that still make me laugh, And I wasn't super familiar with Christian Bale. I didn't watch a lot of those movies growing up, so this was probably one of my first encounters with him in a starring role. I'd maybe seen Little Women or something like that. I don't know.
Well, I know
so this is always kind of
that
been,
on repeat.
He played Batman in Batman Begins, Batman.
Yeah,
right. But
yeah,
that was
pretty much.
post. That was post
those
this,
and this and.
And I had seen
Yeah,
a bunch of
several
his
years later.
subsequent stuff. Yeah. I had definitely seen some of his later stuff by the time I got around to this. And now that you mention that, it probably was after Batman Begins that I saw this for the first time. So post college. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's all right. I like it pretty good. That's basically.
I'm gonna go next.
I mean, I had a friend that was obsessed with the fucking movie. She was obsessed with it. She was in love with Christian Bale. She was in love with the character. She was in love with the story. She's like, "Oh my god, let's watch this." I'm like, "Dude, we watched that last weekend." Can we watch something else? Because I mean, I love Christian Bale too, but bitch, this is a little excessive.
I guess you could say that this is my third time watching this film. I didn't see this film in high school at all. I actually saw this later. I guess I missed the phase that it was going through. That everybody was saying like, "Oh my god, you got to see this movie," and I was like, "Looks like shit," kind of a thing. And it's not that I don't like Christian Bale. I liked him in Empire of the Sun. I actually did see that movie. I also saw him in the Newsies, so I liked his role fine there. It's just, I don't know, it just didn't entirely fall on my plate to watch. And having not too recently watched Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, not too long ago, along with other films that have to do with rich white kids who enjoy acts of killing. I believe that this is like if you put Psycho and took out one of the characters of Rope and then like played it out like a serial murder. And after seeing it this time, I guess I had a little bit more appreciation for it. It's I'm pretty sure that I did not entirely like this for at least the first time. The second time, I guess I was getting into some of the characters surrounding him a little bit, especially since one of the characters ended up I think the guy with the glasses, Louis, or whatever his name was, he played Emery in Rose Red.
Yes, no,
I
it's
remember
Lewis.
him
Lewis.
being
His
a
name
little
is
bit
Lewis.
fatter in Rose
yeah.
Red later on. So
Like, he was also
seeing
in Big Love on
seeing him
HBO.
in that role was interesting. The other character that I think was really good, spot on, was Reese Witherspoon. I mean, she brought that Legally Blonde attitude to the whole array of things, Sweet Home Alabama kind of a thing, you know.
Those roles were after this movie.
So.
They were
Yeah,
after.
I know those roles were after, but to me, I saw those films before I saw this movie. So when I think of her, I think of those movies.
So I had a friend actually that a lot of Reese Witherspoon's roles were like the dumb blonde. Yeah. I had a friend, and Jake and my husband Brandon will know about this friend, would compare me to those roles a lot. Oh, you're so Reese Witherspoon, and then I'm like, oh, you're Karen from Will and Grace. I'm like, nigga, fuck you. Really? And babe, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Because he would get drunk with us. He's like, oh, you're this person. Actually, he's like, he would say all the time, you're Evelyn from American Psycho. I'm like, Eric, really? Dude, right now? You're Evelyn from American Psycho. Of all the characters, I'm Evelyn from American Psycho. Yes. And I'm like, oh, fuck you.
Juice boxes.
What about you, Dane? What was your first impression of this film?
So I saw it back in college. My friends and I at the time, we quoted it all the time. One friend in particular, he like obsessively, he was like obsessed with the movie and with the book, and he would do entire scenes from it all the time. And Ellis as an author in general, and I really enjoyed the film. I have to say that I, at the time, kind of felt like it petered out at the end, but it was one of those things where it's definitely a grower, and it's something that the more times you see it, the more times you fall in love with it, and now it's such that, it's a really just super quotable movie, and I think it gets at the heart of not just 80s Wall Street yuppie culture, but also a lot of what has how the ball has kept on bouncing on that front, because briefly in the movie, but actually a couple more times in the book, Donald Trump Patrick Bateman thinks that he has seen Donald Trump
right.
in the crowd or whatever, and the kinds of people that he surrounds himself with.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, he like uses her to name drop at one restaurant.
But at that time, Donald Trump kind of was the guy that all of those kinds of other competitive, hyper competitive men wanted to be in that particular time and place, and so it fit.
Poor fools.
Well, but that's what I mean. It's like it. That's what I mean. It's like it fit that time and place, but then it also was an eerie foreshadowing of things to come. But point being that same culture of the hyper aggressive, hyper narcissistic men, that are amoral and unscrupulous and everything, that was very much a product of its time, but it has persisted nonetheless. And so little background on the book came out first. That was like around 1990, 91, something like that. And it was basically Bret Easton Ellis who did. He was a young man in New York City in that time and place. The kinds of people that are in the book are the people that and the movie are the kinds of people that he was surrounded with. And keep in
We keep losing you, Dane.
Yeah.
Turn your
That
camera
internet
off.
connection. Yeah, you might just be having some bandwidth sucking away.
he sort of
It's like those guys at Verizon cut his wire.
Yeah.
hopefully maybe they did, but what I was saying was so the kinds of people that Bret Easton Ellis was surrounded with, and he was really fed up with it. And keep in mind that again he was still very not sure about his own sexuality. Only recently did he finally say yes to okay, I'm gay. Just really nasty, awful feelings about these nasty, awful people that you're surrounded with. All of that was culminating in his mind, and so then he just finally put paper, and out came American Psycho. And so I think it's really interesting to view it through that lens, because if you look at the character of Patrick Bateman, especially the one that's in the book, which is very similar to the one in the movie, but some notable differences. But if you look at it through that lens, I think it definitely shines a new light on things. And some important things to carry over from the book is that because it's entirely in subjective first person narration, it's very much the unreliable narrator, but also because it is so subjective, you get all the things that Patrick, what he focuses on. So like, in other words, throughout like every chapter of the book are these long descriptions of what everyone is wearing and which store each item of clothing came from. And after a while you get the sense that everybody looks the same, and it's because they do. They're all intending to look the same pretty much. But there's that, plus also just the little things that he focuses on, plus the fact that other people look at him as being kind of pathetic and like a loser, despite the fact that he himself, uh, by all accounts, is very much a winner, and he is surrounding himself with these really upper crust people. So, I mean, objectively speaking, he's really not that way, and yet his hair is thinning in the book, and it's something that other people look at him as a goofball and a weirdo, which you see that in the movie too. It's just more so that he's kind of cartoonishly in the movie, kind of cartoonishly projecting this image of total confidence. And so it's interesting to think about that. Plus just the fact that in the movie you will get, or in the book you'll get chapters that are so like you like Huey Lewis in the News, that whole thing. And also like all the musical reviews, those are all derived from dedicated chapters in the book that kind of punctuate the main action, that he just kind of takes the time to stop and review whatever was then current.
Yeah, he just talks about what he likes.
Well, but
it's
very indicative of character nonetheless, because what it signifies, well, number one, Bret Easton Ellis was influenced by magazine reviews of music and things like that. But also it's within his reviews of those songs, which again, they carry that over into the movie, just the way that he describes the individual tracks, like for example his description of Hip to Be Square, or his description of The Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston, like they're all very indicative of his thought process, because he talks about the greatest love of all is self-preservation, and like how it's impossible to empathize with others, and that it's not too late to better ourselves. So that's the message he's taking from it. So it seems like it's just stopping, but really it's revealing a lot about the character, and they're carrying that over very well into the movie. But the book itself caused a lot of controversy because, again, it was extremely violent, extremely perverse, extremely pornographic, things like that. And of course, in the 90s, if it bleeds, it leads as far as adaptations. And so, it went through development hell for a while, and Christian Bale was like really hardcore to play the lead role for a long, long time. And Mary Harron was attached to it initially, and then she wasn't, and then she was again. And, he actually didn't take work holding out for that part, so he really wanted it. And you can tell that he wanted it, and you can tell that it was hungry. He was hungry for it. And, so the movie came out, and it was a divisive movie at the time. It was a much bigger hit on home video than it was in theaters, and its cult status has been cemented ever since then. I think partially because of the uncut version being on DVD. I think that helped a lot. But that's how it found its way to me, and of course, it's just so damn quotable.
Well, let's look at the plot here. We have a man by the name of Bateman, where he is part of a firm, and he is engaged to be married, and he's obviously surrounded himself with other men of his ilk, whether they're
the
from
American version of the Sons of the Phil aristocracy.
Ivy League, Harvard,
Yes.
those type of characters.
Mm-hmm.
So he's groomed himself to possibly have the ambition to be a man above his status, and yet he is unhappy in all of his desires and life goals and things of that nature. But he does strive to be, the best that he can be, I guess, in his own level of things. So
That's his intent.
Well, the point is that he has
to fit in.
everything. Well, he has everything like anybody could conceivably want, but he's like profoundly unhappy and just
Well, he's
not
not just
and totally
unhappy.
bored with it.
Well, he's not just unhappy; he's mediocre.
Yeah.
I hate to say this. Oh,
That is a part of it too.
Ooh, oh shit.
Well,
have you all ever known either someone that's a friend or a family member who every time he goes into a room, he's got to compare his shit with your shit?
Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, we've all done that. Second of all, I have known a Patrick Bateman. I've known a few Patrick Batemans, not to the level of they are killing people, but the narcissism
that you know of.
I think the closest I can go.
Well,
It's just more careful.
No, I think the closest I've ever gotten to an actual Patrick Bateman was a guy that I was very briefly engaged to. He was one of the only black kids who went to an all-male private university, which I refer to this university as the guys who got into that university who could not get into the Ivy League because there's a bunch of rich white kids whose parents could not buy their way into William and Mary or to Harvard or wherever else. So they would go to this school. And one year he came to visit me and my roommates, and brought along a bunch of his friends from college. And one of the guys was very Patrick Bateman-like. And the fact that it's the early 2000s, and this guy's like, well, I prefer a dry red, and here's why I prefer it, and I do this, and I do that. I'm like, oh, okay. And he was expecting bitches to be like, "Oh, hey, Daddy, how you doing?" And so he's, faced with the white and black girls of ODU, and he was like, he didn't know how to respond. He tried to pull his front of
He was
I'm
very
from money.
entitled, is what it sounds like.
Exactly. He was very entitled. He had money and he was from privilege, and he tried to talk to them in the way that he thought the ladies would want to be talked to, and it didn't work. But here's the thing, Dustin, okay? Or Dane, sorry. I think all of us is apart. Okay, so there's actually 3 guys on that trip that my ex brought. Guy number 1 was his roommate, and he was kind of like, okay, well, girls don't like me. He moved on. Guy number 2 was very upset about that because he was more or less the more entitled version of, I have money, I come from money, I'm white, I'm entitled. Why aren't these lower class bitches, over me? And there's a 3rd guy who got super wasted, bragged the whole party, I have a girlfriend, and then tried to date rape one of my roommates.
Oh, Jesus.
But I cockblocked because I was like, no, boo, that's not happening. That's not happening. And well, if she was to this podcast,
motherfucker wearing cufflinks, man. If they're wearing cufflinks, it's bad news.
Well,
Those are for weddings.
Well, I mean, if she was I feel like she has no idea like how close she came to being date raped. If she listens to this podcast, she might know about it. But I cock blocked the hell out of that night. He was like, I just want to have a sit down and talk with her. I'm like, no, motherfucker, she's sleeping. But I mean, we were vibing
like a female superhero.
Sleeping.
That'd even be a good superhero name, Cockblock.
Cock block.
Yeah,
exactly.
tick or something.
I knew
Well,
what he was trying to do.
Well, here's so and something interesting, kind of along those lines. Which again, this is in the book, but the spirit of it is carried over into the movie. Structurally, the movie is much more plot driven than the book necessarily is, and it has to be because basic structure to follow. But the book is just kind of its own thing. Now, with the book, part of what makes it effective is that you will have chapters that are called something very innocuous like Tuesday, and it'll be, descriptions of killing the homeless man. And then the next thing will be some inane party with, a bunch of automatons that all look the same and all sound the same and all speak about the most vapid things in the world. And then, you'll have a review of, Huey Lewis in the News or whatever. And, these things, they all...
It's very stream of consciousness.
That's my point.
For him, it is just another Tuesday. For him,
that's exactly
another Wednesday. And,
that's exactly what I mean. Is that
night?
That's what I mean. Is like, so in your example there with the date rape guy, like, usually, unless it's like, I don't know what, like a stalker situation or something. Usually, the kind of guys that would do that on the regular, they don't really think about it like in any kind of premeditated sort of way. It's just something that, it's just, this is what I do,
Well, I think actually, for these boys, they had a lot of the ones that my ex hung up with, because the ex in question came from an inner city school. He was the only black person that got accepted to this particular school that year. But the boys that he hung out with were guys that went to prep schools. He was poor. His mom was a school teacher. His dad was Jamaican, had gotten deported by the government for drug trafficking. And for the people that he hung out with, they were used to this sort of how should I say it?
Affluence.
What's the movie? No, School Ties. Remember School Ties with Brendan Fraser?
Yeah.
Yeah, like even in prep school, even in high school, they were still separated by sex. So like he's like, oh, my girl, she goes to a party school, it's public. Hey, y'all want to come along? She's got girl roommates, da-da-da. And so his guy friends were like, holy shit, because it's a public school, it's co-ed, they're partying. So they had these preconceived notions of like, oh, we're okay. And then they came and they realized that No. Two of my roommates had boyfriends at the time, and then I was like, okay, I'm dating him. And then my last roommate, Shannon, she was like, I'm not trying to fuck. So what the fuck?
Well, but
And so
that's what I'm getting at, is that like you come
the
from
entitlement,
that. Well, that from that, even more than that, it's a specific mindset in which now, again, not to get too political, but
oh god, yeah.
again, the time and the time and the place, it ties in nonetheless. But I read the Too Much and Never Enough book that Donald Trump's niece wrote, and there was this is not controversial, it's just, this is a fact. The big influence for both Fred Trump and Donald Trump's just overall mindset was the influence of Norman Vincent Peale and the power of positive thinking specifically. And so in other words, if you kind of approach the world as if it is your oyster, then in its most extreme form, let's say, then you approach it if you know that
You're breaking up pretty bad there, Dane.
Really bad, yeah.
I'm sorry, but well, my point is, if you see the world as your oyster, then you'll take anything or anyone that presents themselves to you. And so, in that respect, you could say that, that kind of mindset, it makes it such that other people are just kind of there to be taken.
Well, Dan, use that same excuse for any kind of person who has privilege. If you're used to having a certain amount of privilege in your life, and Brandon, what was that? You're breaking out. What was that?
Oysters are fucking weird. Am I right?
They are fucking weird.
But
but if you're used to having a certain amount of
you're right in that respect, that those two, you're in a sense that those, it does kind of presuppose a certain type of person that could theoretically arise from that situation. I'm thinking,
yes.
Well, entitlement, and then taken to its utmost extreme, this idea that you're special and therefore you can do, like greatness is coming to you. It's right for the taking. So, which that is, it's partially a lifestyle, upbringing thing. Part of it is also a personality type, and part of it is a belief structure. And I think
can we talk about the fact that despite Patrick Bateman's best efforts, he is mediocre. Like, Paul Allen, he's like, oh, I got a table of Dorsia. Paul Allen's card is all nice. And Lewis, who is, and then they gay, which is a terrible thing apparently to them in the 80s. Even Lewis has a very nice card, when they're doing the whole business card thing. And it's like, Patrick Bateman, your father practically, quote unquote, owns the company. And of course, we find later on in the book, his dad does not own the company. His dad's just like a higher up, but whatever. And Patrick Bateman has the title of vice president of what? We don't know.
And we never find out either.
We never find out. Like,
vice president of badass mirror posing.
I was going to say, in the book and the movie, both of them, we never see him work, ever.
Exactly. That's my point. Right. He's very mediocre. So, and he's so mediocre, even on the fact that he wants to pull in this, front, that he's this amazing guy. He's so rich. And again, he's super fucking entitled. But he can't even get a table at Dorsia. Even though Paul Allen,
Well, and that's what's so interesting about that, though, is you're absolutely right with his mediocrity, but it's his mediocrity relative to these other upper crust people. If you plopped him next to the homeless guy that he kills, or whatever, then he's like extraordinary, obviously,
Yeah.
because he,
But
so even in his mediocrity, he is far more successful or more living the American dream, supposedly, than most of the population. So that's part of, I think, also what is driving much of the creative force behind the narrative is that you get the sense in the book. This is a kind of a difference. You get the sense in the book that Patrick Bateman is very much kind of a product of his time and place, and he's trying to be that. And then I think it's more so in the way that he's played in the film, that it's more so this is someone who is really loving his particular time and place, but it's something that it just happens to suit him. So it's a difference in, like, did the environment make him, or is he just taking advantage of it? And
the environment is everything in this film.
mhm.
And again, you got to toss the book aside for the film itself and treat it in a way as a separate animal. But Dave, I know you've been trying to speak, but I definitely want to chime in after you, though.
well, as Patrick Bateman had said in the film to his Evelyn, I'm just trying to fit in. You know? And to me, that's what I kind of look at Patrick Bateman as doing. Everything that he's trying to do, even his executive position or whatever, as vice president of what we don't know, he is trying to fit into everyone around him, even though they are kind of like the snobs with their noses up in the air looking down at him. And even the business card segment, they're all trying. He pulls out his card and he shows them his card, and everyone's got a better business card than he does.
Yeah.
So.
Well, even my ex, like, he knew he did not come from privilege and money and all that stuff. Like, he would talk openly with his friends, like, and his friends would treat him like a fucking unicorn. Like, oh my God, you're black and you came from inner city and your mom was like Afrocentric as a school teacher. Oh, where did you summer? And it's like, I'm dead ass when I say this. Like, they first met him, he told them, like, oh, I come from Petersburg and Virginia, and they did ask him, where do you summer? Like, that same question in the fucking movie. Where do you summer? And he said, like, I got asked that.
Where do you summer?
And I was like, dude, like, fucking hell, like, most people don't summer. We summer where we work. Like, we're still here.
Right.
And he said the disconnect is insane. And, they don't understand, like, what life is like for normal, quote unquote, people.
Yeah.
So for the Patrick Batemans of the world, he's collecting a 6-figure salary, I'm guessing 6 figures, and he's like, oh, Gene, I need you to do some reservations at this place and that place. And she's like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a real fucking job. And she's like, yes, sir. And then she leaves the room and he turns on The Price is Right.
Yeah. Well, and so the interesting example of unreliable narrator in the book, his secretary, he explicitly says she's secretly in love with me. He just is assuming it. And then in the movie, and largely it's thanks to Chloe Sevigny, who is so good. I love her. She gets a lot more personality, a lot more agency, I think, because she's kind of in many ways she's kind of the voice of the audience, like someone that if they were in that situation, they would just be trying to do a good job at their work and trying to do right by their boss or whatever. And by all accounts, like comparatively speaking, I think that they do have a little something together, but only insofar as I think he can see that she is not worthy of his rage or anything, that, there's a part of him that wants to extinguish her goodness, but even then he knows that, it's not worth it. There are some things worth preserving. And so I do think that speaks to the overall mentality of, because one of the arguments I think you could make with Patrick Bateman as a character is that, you know, well, two things. It's a twofold thing. One is, did any of it really happen? Because again, the book is very stream of consciousness. It's very subjective. It's very blurs the lines between fantasy and reality all the time. And the movie does emulate that very much. But even more than that, you have to ask, is Patrick Bateman really all that well suited for this particular place, or is he just trying to fit in, and is he doing a relatively poor job of it? And so that's where his homicidal either ideation or fantasies come from, because I think you could definitely make the argument that he's someone who perhaps isn't as naturally suited for his environment as he himself may think or may want to be, and that his homicidal either ideation or fantasies, those are derived from that wanting to fit in, and but on some level knowing that other people view him as a joke. And that's even more prevalent in the book, where there are a lot of just little random incidents, either at a party or at a restaurant or something, where if you took them out of context, you'd be like, this would be a pretty funny scene in a comedy or something, because it does have that feel. And so you do kind of ask yourself, well, that's why I brought up the author's personal turmoil and stuff, because you do get that sense of this person that is just stuck in this particular place that they're trying to fit into, but it's really not worth fitting into. And so then by the time that person wakes up and realizes it, it's too late. And you get the same spirit of that at the end of the movie with the, my confessions meant nothing, that whole thing. The book makes that even more clear with him staring at a sign that says, "This is not an exit." And
has anybody heard of or is in any way familiar with the American Psycho musical?
I am familiar with
I
it.
know of it.
I've heard of it because I follow the first main guy, his wife. I follow her on Instagram.
Because I know most of the I know a lot of the songs kind of by heart, because I used to listen to it a lot. And as we're talking about kind of how Patrick Bateman perceives himself, there's a song called "Not a Common Man" that really sums it up.
Mm-hmm.
And like the opening lines like really like lay it all out there. Look at history, open the books. There are statues with great looks. There are gods, there are kings. Pretty sure I'm the same thing.
Well, the so interesting little factoid that ties into that. So Bret Easton
Again,
Ellis,
he's narcissistic.
And there is also a really great. It has a really great finale, and that song is "This Is Not an Exit."
Yeah. Very, very interesting little factoid to tie into that. So Bret Easton Ellis was given the chance to do one of the various drafts of the script, one of many that circulated throughout the various studios that had optioned the property before Lionsgate eventually did it. And he was given the chance to write one of the scripts, and he was still relatively new to screenwriting, but also just the way that he conceived the story, he didn't really conceive of it as a film. And so the way that he did it, because he just didn't know how to do it, was he actually did have like a musical number at the top of a building and stuff like that. It was like really bizarre. So in a way, there is a precedent for there being an American Psycho musical. And but what's interesting about that is that I think part of, to stave off some of the potential controversy, but also to get kind of a counterpoint vision, that's why they specifically went with Mary Harron to direct, and she and Guinevere Turner to adapt. So you got two women's point of view on this story, and they were able to, in some ways, they both had a good flair for the darkly comedic, but they also were able to take more of an outsider looking in approach to the kind of study of toxic masculinity, as we would call it today. Because and it was actually Guinevere Turner approached Bret Easton Ellis and was like, "What the fuck, dude? Why did you write this way?" And without knowing him or really why he wrote it, and he said, "Well, it's a feminist book." Because she was like, big hardcore feminist, and then, hearing that, she was like, "Oh, I get it now." And and so I think part of it was to stave off controversy, but also part of it was I think they really were able to get the satire, and they were able to provide that outsider looking in perspective that I think really helped the behavior of these guys to shine, because that's really is Roger Ebert said it best, that it was less of a narrative about a psycho killer as much as it was a portrait of a personality. And that's definitely the case. And it's not just Patrick Bateman, but it's all the people he's surrounded with. And a lot of the best satires, A Clockwork Orange included, well, the movie specifically, but a lot of the best satires are the ones in which the evil protagonist is surrounded by a group of friends or by a society that's just as evil as they are.
Right.
And so that's communicated very well, but it's such that I think when you look at it through the lens of someone that is trying to fit into this world that has no meaning whatsoever and is explicitly superficial and blithe and shallow and of the moment and all that, devoid of anything meaningful. You're in that world. He's trying to fit into that world. He clearly doesn't fit into it. It frustrates him to no end. And by the time that he really wakes up to that and realizes that he's just being all consumed by this, just coming on apart at the seams, then it's too late to escape that. And so that's what both the novel's ending and the movie's ending signify, that by the time he wakes up to this, that it's just too late to escape, because there's nowhere to escape to. He can be as open and honest about his maybe real, maybe not killings, and it doesn't matter. So it's like, even if he did do it, it doesn't matter, because these people still well, an important touch in the book and the movie, people regularly mistake each other for other people, because guess what, they all look the same. So it's easy to do, but they'll all regularly call each other by different people's names, and they'll just go along with it, which is the
no, in the business world, it's not happen. Oh, dude, I'm
What happened?
what?
Jesus,
What?
I cannot. I'm connecting this movie to another movie that was okay. So Joker was
yeah.
It's the incel anthem, so to speak. I'm kind of surprised.
Not really.
The Vice President, I am speaking. Wow. Psycho. I'm surprised that this film is not the sort of incel film, because at the end of the day, Patrick Bateman does represent everything that you would want to aspire to be. And at the same time, while he is good looking and wealthy and educated and has opportunities, he kind of still sucks.
Yeah.
And so he's that incel who's like, yeah, I got all this, I got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I still don't have the top of the top, the creme de la creme. And so
a lot of those private school cufflink motherfuckers didn't see titties till way late in life too. So
I think that theory holds up if you're speaking about someone like, let's say, Elliot Rodger, who he didn't really think of himself as attractive, but like, if you've seen him, he was definitely a pretty boy and he dressed like it, and yet he still harbored all of those misogynistic feelings. For him, it was because he was explicitly antisocial. So he had these other personality flaws. It wasn't that he Because he was, wealthy. He, was, I think, good looking. If anything, a little effeminate in his look because he was a pretty boy. So in other words, like that holds up if you're talking about that kind of incel. The vast majority of them, they tend to not think of themselves as being good looking or smart or educated or whatever. And so if they were to, they might see someone like a Patrick Bateman as more of an aspirational figure, maybe. I think they would relate more to someone like a Travis Bickle or like Arthur Fleck, the Joker. They would relate more to that, I think. But, with someone like a Patrick Bateman, maybe they might see that as an aspirational thing. But even then, it's like that's much more of someone who is explicitly narcissistic and someone that that's a different personality type because generally speaking incels are very self-loathing.
Okay,
and,
so as the sole female figure in the group right now, Travis Bickle, Elliot Rodger, I can't believe I'm saying this, actually good looking guys.
I want to rub Travis's mohawk.
Thank you. So, from these typical stereotypical incel point of view, they think that that us females, we all want the chads. Becky wants the chad, and the beta females, they want the chad. It's like, motherfucker, really? Because
in fairness,
how do you explain some of these guys getting girls? How do you explain Jonah Hill getting a fucking girl?
In fairness to the guys in this one, from what I understand, there are legions upon legions that would descend on Jared Leto given the chance.
Well, Jared Leto does look he does look like a girl.
Yeah, so Jared Leto's character, like, this is the thing about him is that
I'd take a run at him.
Not even that good looking. Like he's
he's not really
attractive. Of
I
all,
just want to swaddle him like a baby. You know what I mean?
That love the girly man.
I
Well,
went
he's
to grab him.
very effeminate in his look.
This
Got
and
those
this was
cheekbones
awesome.
now.
Okay, so I'm gonna grab him by the scruff of his hair and take a pair of scissors and like cut his hair like that goddamn like fucking like business in the front, party in the back shit you got going on. It's gotta go. I know it's the 80s, but guys, it's gotta go. Ugh, so
and by
no.
the way, that's a direct tie-in with Fight Club. Both of them and him in both of those. But I do want to mention a couple things. We've kind of had a very freewheeling and ranging discussion all over every which way. I'm not even sure we've gotten to too much of the character individuals.
Well, we've been discussing the character of Patrick Bateman the entire time, and really, Patrick Bateman is the only character in this movie who matters.
I was gonna say like that. He kind of is. He is the entire focus of the movie, pretty explicitly, and
everybody else
even more
fairly. Everyone else is fairly flat by design.
Exactly.
That directly leads to the point I wanted to bring up real quick. Just it's a real simple thing, but I saw this on IMDb, and I think from my viewing of the movie, I can agree with it, and maybe you guys can tell me if the book is the same way. But it's pointed out that explicitly the only scene in the film that does not feature Patrick Bateman is the one where Jean comes to the full realization of who he is. And so I really like that because that gives her that little extra bit, like kind of, it helps further set her apart from the rest of all the inanity and the craziness.
Well, I think was
Jean is the
one could make the point.
Okay.
One can make the point.
Yeah.
In that scene, that yes, it does set her apart, but only in as much as to show another reflection of Patrick Bateman. She is not her own character 100% because they are all reflections in his eyes.
Right.
90%. And the only real part of this character, and I want to go ahead and finish my point at this point, just to run real quick.
Yeah, keep talking.
Because looking at this character, this is a character that you are trying to get a reflection of, a character that has very little grasp on most of humanity, most of humanity's emotions. This is why people in my field target this film as a teaching experience, because antisocial personality usually comes from this, comes from a place of not understanding emotions, but they do amazingly well. Narcissism follows suit, which is why I also think that yes, he wants to fit in, but he doesn't just want to fit in. He wants to be the best.
Well,
He
yeah.
wants to be the one thing that is reflected in everybody else's eyes.
But he
Yeah.
breaks down in tears when he doesn't have the best business card.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that is the point.
It's
and that is
narcissism.
that's
Well,
exactly
and
what separates
it's explicitly that idea of if you're not the best, then you're a loser, and that's it.
Right.
You know, it's that very black and white thinking. And well, to answer Jacob's question about that scene with the kind of childlike drawings that she
Right.
finds. I don't recall that being in the book. I don't think it is. I think part of that is the filmmakers.
I think that was the filmmakers. That may have been their chance to kind of let the air out a little and give the audience an in.
Well,
Well,
that,
go
but
off,
all,
yeah.
yes, but
Yeah.
also, well, okay, yes, but also, so the book is exactly what you said as far as what Brandon said, every character being through the lens of Patrick Bateman's own perceptions. Because film is a much more objective medium, or at least that's how it's presented most of the time. That kind of unreliable narrator thing, it's harder to translate, and so that's part of why the ending of the film, that's part of why it either worked for you or it didn't, because of the fact that the film is a more objective medium, and it does kind of deliberately muddy the waters. Now, I think that was partially the filmmaker's conceit, because they give this innocent woman more agency and more character, number one, but also number two, more of a objective window into the fact that her boss, even if he isn't actually a psycho killer, he is definitely a disturbed person, like with these dark fantasies and stuff, which I personally am of the opinion that the murders never actually happened, or even if they did, then it doesn't matter, because the world that he's surrounded with is as evil as he is. So they might as well not have. But
it's sort of funny. I think Bret Easton Ellis has said that they did happen.
The character Jean, like, she is the one person he can't kill.
Well, actually, I do want to mention this, and that was a point I was going to bring up, and I keep getting kicked off. Jean is one of 3 that apparently he plans to kill or intends to kill and doesn't kill in the movie. He almost kills Lewis, but he finds him, I guess, he's too unnerved by him or something. He almost kills that poor kitten and has a little bit of, and he almost kills Jean. They are the 3 he almost kills and backs away from. So that's kind of interesting to think that And as far as the uncertainty principle, I was very intrigued to read that Mary Harron instructed Willem Dafoe to do every single scene in 3 ways. He knows exactly who Patrick Bateman is and what he's on about. He has no idea, or he's not sure. And she spliced those takes together. So that's kind of a fun approach for that character.
Well, and that character, Willem Dafoe I absolutely love, but like, he brings something to that part that isn't there in the book. Like the lines of dialogue are exactly the same between the 2, but it's just more so the way that he plays it. And obviously, like you said, it's those 3 different ways, and he always leaves you guessing, which obviously that really puts you into Patrick Bateman's mindset, because you just don't know what to make of this guy. And at the time, I remembered when I first saw the movie, I was like, I kind of wanted him to be the Van Helsing of the movie, if Patrick Bateman was Dracula or whatever. Which, I mean, he kind of sort of fits that role, except that it's even more so in the movie than the book, because the book, there's only one scene that features
He's an
him.
Ahab.
I
Well,
would.
Patrick Bateman's Ahab.
Well, think about it.
Okay.
So Pat. Well, hold on, Kimball. He is only in one scene in the book, and the movie they actually split his one scene into two, and they structured a little bit differently to add some more tension and
No.
to what were you saying, Dave?
I was gonna say the way that I would put it is let's put Jonathan Harker in the role of Dracula, and then place him in an executive office, and there you have American Psycho. So
Here's the thing: I actually did not like Willem Dafoe's performance in this movie. I'm okay. So here's the thing: so I understand what they're trying to do. You know, they're trying to throw the audience a red herring. I get that, but actually, Jacob, the director, her whole thing of like providing these alternative shots of like it looks like the detective knows that Patrick Bateman did it, and like he didn't do it, but he didn't do it. I'm like, I didn't like that. I'm gonna be honest, I did not fucking like that. I get what they were trying to do with the audience. They were trying to like throw us that confusion aspect, but I didn't fucking like it. And then Willem Dafoe being Willem Dafoe, like, I guess he just met up with someone else that night. Why are you here? I think like, why are you fucking here, dude?
Well, I think it's because the way that they structured it in the film compared to the book makes that character a lot more important, number one. Number two, it does reinforce the tension of saying that there are these other forces that are potentially after our protagonist. So that just helps with the overall screenplay structure, but also that whole device of he knows exactly what it is or he doesn't or whatever, that was actually put to use, which I still need to watch this series, but I know that this was put to use in the People versus O.J. Simpson American Crime Story. That was put to use in how Cuba Gooding Jr. was directed as O.J. They had some takes where he was guilty, some takes where he was innocent, and they spliced them together. Which again, I think that sort of thing can work really well to add some dimension to a performance that is meant to kind of leave the audience guessing and also open to interpretation. But for sure, structurally, it makes perfect sense why it's there in those particular spots, because it does create a sense of a through line and a tension that isn't really there in the book, because the book is very much a series of vignettes in Patrick Bateman's life, whereas the movie does attempt to string those together into a 3-act structure.
Well, Dane, if you want a movie that will make you guess of like, are they or aren't they? What's the truth? What's not the truth? Body Shots with Amanda Peet. God, what's his fucking Tara Reid? What's the actor's name? He played the fat kid in Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Jerry O'Connell. Just the guy from Powder. Look up the movie. It's called Body Shots. If you really want a movie that will fuck with your mind about what truth actually is, watch that goddamn movie.
I will.
2000s, late 90s, and to this day, I'm like, what the fuck actually happened? My friends from college, we still debate this movie. Like, well, what actually happened, nigga? I don't fucking know.
Well, I'll definitely check that out, because I mean, I think that can be effective just because, like, if it's done right, I think that can't be effective because, like, for example, like with the People versus O.J. Simpson, like, that really does put you in the mindset of people at the time where, like, that whole case, like, split people down the middle. And so it really does put you in that same frame of mind. And with Patrick Bateman not really knowing what the fuck's up with this guy. You know, what does he know? What doesn't he know? You know, that.
With O.J. Simpson, that was a real story.
I know.
But
Yeah.
in fiction, in film, a
Yeah.
good storyteller has to somehow translate that into a fiction story. You know, like how can we make the audience believe or not believe, but be confused, whichever of the three, one way or the other. And I would say American Psycho, like we were sitting there, Brandon and I were, I said, well, damn, did he or didn't he? I've been saying that for 20 fucking years. Like, did he do it?
I think
Good.
he's
I
I
read
think
the fucking
he's
book.
someone I think that Willem Dafoe's take on that character, I think he's someone that he is definitely baiting Patrick Bateman constantly, and that he kind of is going into the whole thing as if he's got a guilty man, but he also has enough detachment from the situation to say that, you know, if I'm wrong, then no skin off my nose, but, you know, it's like everyone's a suspect, and, you know, to just kind of coolly deal with this customer that probably isn't used to dealing with someone like me. You know, that's sort of
Actually,
how I interpreted it.
It's
And
kind
Mo,
of
did you
funny.
have-
I do want to touch momentarily on how fucking hilarious it is that O.J. Simpson got away with murder and then went to jail for stealing his own shit.
But
The
he
ending
didn't
of
have
this
Johnny
movie is
Cochran for
probably
the
the
second
thing
trial.
that's yeah, he robbed his own memorabilia. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty great. Yeah. The I
This
wanted to-
movie, the ending of it is really what kind of has kept me from probably liking it as much as I probably should, and as much as a lot of people probably would assume that I would. Because it's definitely a fun movie. It's just, I don't know. There was a time period, I feel like, right around the time that I saw this where I was super tired of movies that tried to pull the rug out from under you at the end.
Right.
So
And I
whole
feel
it not being real just annoyed me.
You could kind of argue too. My feeling is, again, I went into it this time watching it more as a satire, and I kind of felt that is it or isn't it ending was kind of a cheat of sorts for that sort of, like if they were going full on satire, they should have committed all the way. He should have had his big confession with the lawyer, and the lawyer just basically go, I don't freaking care. You know, basically, and that'd be it. You know, basically the whole.
That'd have been a much better ending.
I was almost expecting that, and I was kind of like let down that I didn't get that kind of, you know, because
I think it's there. It's just not as clear as perhaps as it could have or should have been for film. Because like
it's a possibility.
Well, so some one of the other little things is when he goes to Paul Allen's apartment and it's all pristine and up for tours and stuff, and the which this scene is in the book and it plays out exactly as it does in the movie. But it's the way in which the realtor, the apartment person, the way in which she deals with Patrick Bateman. You know, you're not sure if, and he's not sure if it's because she knows that a murder happened here and she's covering it up, or she's just disturbed that this guy doesn't have an appointment to see the apartment and is acting weird, you know, because it could be either.
He was acting weird.
See, that's an example of it being fun that they have you
he's
guessing.
acting weird, and again,
or the part where he fires a gun at the cop cars and they blow up like in the movies, and he kind of looks at the gun like, the hell?
Well, and so the way that Christian Bale played that particular scene, well, that whole sequence actually, because at that point he's really, and in the book too, he's kind of mentally unraveling, and you know, so in the book it describes that in just as insane a detail, and it's like it goes from 0 to 60 like that, you know, and just like it does in the movie. And the way in which Christian Bale played that scene was he described it as he believes that Patrick Bateman thinks of himself as being the star of his own action movie, and you know, I could definitely see that.
I think the way
he thinks he's like the star, and he's you know, or maybe even the villain, because at this point
Yeah.
he does see himself as a villain. He's like,
Yeah.
oh my,
I
I
think
made
that
this, I did that. He shot all these people. He's like, I killed this person, I killed that person. Like, God, well, damn, nigga, like, what'd you do?
you can
God,
see the
fucking damn it again.
you could see the disappointment in the
Yeah.
character's eyes once he confronts the lawyer and says,
Mhm.
"No, you couldn't have killed that one. I was meeting with this guy was meeting with them last week. It's not even possible
Yeah.
for that to happen." So
Yeah.
you could see that he really wanted to be the star of this, so that he could say he's above these people, that he killed these people, that he's the sensational serial killer that's ahead of him, that's ahead of himself, and that plays into the narcissism. He wants to be the best, and instead he's just another one of these rich people. Which, by the way, the environment, as I wanted to say something about earlier, but the environment is the perfect environment for it, because narcissism and narcissistic personalities, they play out perfectly in the late 80s to the mid 80s, because that is when you saw the disconnect between rich and poor become far greater than it has been since like early history in the country, with these extremely high class rich and everybody even the middle class being so far below that they're in a so different worlds apart, that there is 100% disconnect. That to those people, yes, it's made that the disconnect has been made to the point where those people don't view people as real people.
I think what's sad is that you look at the Patrick Bateman's and not just Patrick Bateman, but all the guys he hangs out with, all of them, and this takes place over 1987, whatever. Okay.
Yes.
2000.
And here we are, more than 30 years later,
Yeah.
and you still have these kind of people, like where, oh, we'll take the
Damn
homeless police.
millennials.
Oh yeah. Oh, what the fuck?
Well, it's also no accident that I think
Brandon,
this.
Jake, and I. Well, no, Brandon, you're sorry, baby. You're young Gen X, and David, you.
Oh no,
Jake,
Dave
and
said
I.
it takes place in 2000, and that's why I said that. I was like,
Oh,
that's
No,
damn
no,
millennials.
it takes place
What if
very
you were
No,
a
close
this
fucking
to
takes
1987.
place. Is it
1987. Early
Yeah, the
87.
1987 about
the book. It's funny. The book was written at around like the setting is at around like
Reagan's second term.
They moved
well
it
no
forward.
Slightly
no
before it.
that's well no that's the interesting thing. So the book actually I want to say it's like maybe 89 or 90 because the president that is mentioned at the end of the book is George H.W. Bush, whereas in the movie they move it back to 87 because that's it on the TV. They mention Iran Contra. So they actually moved it back a few years.
They also it's
And
no
they segue
it's
into that
I
speech.
think it's no accident. I think it's no accident as well that they chose 87 because that was the year that Wall Street came out. And that was obviously a movie that this echoed in some ways.
Oh yeah,
The whole greed is good speech. Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I could see these people definitely looking at Gordon Gekko as some kind of god, and like they're
Remember the movie Boiler Room? With Vin Diesel as one of his early films, and
Giovanni Ribisi.
Exactly, and they were like, greed is good. They were quoting Wall Street and other movies that are like Wall Street, and like it was their fucking idol. And it's like you had people in the 80s and even later years idolizing these types of characters, like going to these like $100 plate restaurants and
well
these like high-rise apartments so they never ever slept in, barely.
Boiler Room was very heavily based on the book, well, the person/book that would eventually become the movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. So it was very heavily influenced by Jordan Belfort, and of course, obviously, a direct adaptation with Scorsese's
scumbag
film.
legend right there.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Well, so what's interesting also, the time and place is very important, and if I recall, 87, was that also when there was like a big Wall Street crash also? Um, it was around that time, I think.
I think it was just before.
Yeah. Well, the point is, like, in other words, like, there was sort of this, you get the sense. What?
I can't money in all those years. And then my dad died in 87. So, yeah, we lost money.
Yeah.
It's also the year Metallica was recording Injustice for All, and the people in the studio were leaving Jason Newsted's bass off the final mix. They fixed that later, though.
Well, so what's also interesting, I think, is so you've got this particular place that's really important, this time that's really important. You've got someone like a Gordon Gekko, like a Donald and Ivana Trump, all being seen as like this ultimate good. And interesting little, one of my favorite chapters in the book that there's no way that they could have made this happen in the movie, technologically speaking, or just in terms of flattery of the person that it entails, is so in the book there's a scene where Patrick Bateman in the American Gardens building where he lives, that he is in an elevator with Tom Cruise. And what's interesting about that is, so Christian Bale actually based his performance of Patrick Bateman, he based it on Tom Cruise and also on Nicolas Cage's performance in Vampire's Kiss, which also.
Oh my god, my parents love that movie, by the way.
I love that movie, and actually that would make a good double feature with American Psycho because they cover very similar types of characters. But he based it on those two portrayals, and well, with Tom Cruise specifically, I can't remember exactly which interview it was, but he took notes on Tom Cruise's aggressive friendliness and the fact that he saw nothing behind his eyes, and so he took that and transplanted it to Patrick Bateman. But it's just interesting to note that in the book there is a scene where he explicitly tries to have a conversation with Tom Cruise, and I forget exactly why Tom Cruise is there. I think he must be like shooting a movie or something. Might have even been The Color of Money for all I know. Or actually, no.
Okay. So let me just stop because Dave, you got a later show coming up, and it's almost 11 o'clock. So,
Right.
Dave, do your thing, boy.
Well, since we've talked a lot about the plot and things like that, and over time, let's get into special effects of the movie. Were there many special effects? Or?
A lot of practical effects, you might say.
A lot of those kill scene practical effects, yeah.
And and there were some minor ones, like the ATM saying "Feed me a kitten," that.
Okay, Jacob, I can do better than that in Photoshop. Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said minor.
Which, if they'd have done the kills in the book, then oh boy, you'd have had to get like Tom Savini and get everybody on board with that, because like you got stuff that's like super sadistic in the book, and and there's actually an interesting bit of comparison, because like some of the kills and stuff, like he will torture a girl for like days and just let her rot in the middle of the room, and like and what's interesting is that he lets her rot in the middle of the room, and the rest of the room around him is just going to absolute hell. He's not keeping it up at all. So while he's on the outside, he's perfect. His inside world is just crumbling.
So, well, you could say the special effects of the food in the restaurants was really nice. Made you kind of hungry, and then you think about the bill and go like,
oh, the opening sequence is great with them making it look like it's blood and everything, but it's all so elegant,
Yeah.
It's sort of like I think Kim had said something about it earlier, when she was reminded of the opening of Dexter, and I was thinking maybe that's by design, actually, that Dexter opening.
Right, it could be.
I hate that opening. Love the show, but I hate the opening. It makes me so uncomfortable.
We got to mention, of course, as well, the music, because that was a character unto itself in this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the especially with the
Sounds so
controversies around it.
catchy.
Yeah, I know.
Well, before we talk about music, I just thought about getting into our favorite scenes.
Oh boy, so many. It's like picking your favorite
Hands
child.
down, the mirror flexing, dude.
My
That mirror
favorite
flexing is
scene.
something I aspire to one day. I've just never found myself, properly positioned with some mirrors, but it's going down. So, I'll update you guys when that eventually happens. I don't know, the chainsaw too. It's hard not to love that shit.
Oh, he drops it
definitely
down
one of
the
my favorite.
stairwell.
Yeah,
Oh,
how he's like
God.
tracking her with it and shit. That's
Oh,
amazing. That's like
no.
one of my favorite kills in the movie. Period. And
I'll
then
admit,
I swear, if I had to throw out another favorite scene or character, it'd definitely be the dog. Yipe. That just the way that whole scene is.
God
It's
damn,
brutal,
my
man.
favorite scene has to be. Oh, okay. So
It's hard, isn't it?
it is because I've watched this movie so many times over the years. Okay, so first would be the business card scene where
that was
they're
good.
like, these guys are so fucking pretentious. They really are.
Yeah.
And they're talking about like, oh, I got this and this millennium. And I remember when I got my business cards printed at work, I was like, you got my degree wrong. Just correct my degree. And she reprinted my fucking stuff with the correct degree. And I was like, you still misspelled my name. Fuck it, I don't care. Just go ahead and fuck it, I don't care. And you sure? I'm like, I don't fucking care. Just fine. I'll hand out these goddamn business cards. They're all going to the same number. I don't care. And it's like, oh my god, the difference between like me and these guys, like they're like, I just make them like the printers, they paid special money for this shit.
At one point.
Exactly,
Yeah.
like
Wow,
actually
like
good
so
money for
funny.
that goddamn shit. And then the opening scene where he's like, "My name is Patrick Bateman. I live in this building, and I use the morning routine." That is
Yeah.
actually really funny.
Oh,
actually.
that's
I'm like
Yeah.
girls who are
that's a
beauty
scene
bloggers.
right there
I have
for
seen many a video of beauty bloggers who are mimicking that video as satire.
So he was the
And-
original beauty blogger.
The original
Something
beauty
like
blogger,
that.
exactly.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because like he's definitely a what would later be called a metrosexual, at least, if
Exactly.
not a closet homosexual. And I think you could definitely you could definitely read the text that way. I think.
Okay, well, maybe the text, but we're talking about the movie.
Well, that scene with Lewis makes you wonder.
Exactly. That's where I was going with that.
Voice and speaking.
Let us have our dreams, okay?
So, beside those scenes, business card scene, opening scene, and then of course I mentioned this to Brandon while we were watching it. His first sex scene with the hookers, with the streetwalker and the high class hooker, where all he cares about is his whole pontificating of the music, and then of course he's like,
Yeah, I love it. Just getting in those flexes.
He's not even caring about like these girls are doing this stuff. He's like, Sabrina, don't just look at it, eat it. I'm like,
yeah.
He has like a video camera at one point, doesn't he?
Well, and that was like
about like what they're doing or how they're making him feel. He's looking at the mirror, not even a camera. He's looking at a mirror beside him. He's like, "Who?" He's flexing like, "Who?" Like
maybe I'm imagining that, but I swore he had like an old school video camera at one point in that scene.
He did. It was the 80s.
Yeah.
That's on tape somewhere, and that makes me happy.
Cutting edge, like sharper image shit right there.
It was because my parents, my dad, my mama said to have one of those. And then my final favorite scene is the one where he kills Paul Allen.
Yes.
And he's talking about
you like Huey Lewis in the news.
If you don't, there's a problem. For sure.
My friends and I could do that entire scene word for word.
I did that in drama class once.
Oh yeah, my
Yeah.
friend did that too.
And actually, one of my friends was like, Kim, yes, sweetie, I'm afraid you might be a little crazy. I'm like, bitch, like fine. Like because you picked this scene out of all the ones that we could have done for class, you picked this scene, and you went from like totally talking about like music, and then you were screaming and hacking someone to death. And I was like, yeah, and it's drama class. She's like, you're a little crazy, so we can't be friends anymore. I'm like, okay.
Well, good. Don't
She must have not been a fan of the news.
don't be
Okay?
friends with
It's
someone like
drama
that.
class, ho.
You don't need that negativity in your life.
Seriously.
Right.
Sports is one of the greatest albums ever.
Even
I'm
even Hannibal Lecter.
Babe, Brandon, I'm talking to my husband. I love you. I acted out that whole fucking scene, word for fucking word. The other scene I acted out was from Hand that Rocks the Cradle. And,
Oh, damn.
scene was a Fatal Attraction. So I'm really not that crazy. I'm just.
You better be careful tonight, Brandon. I mean, it sounds like you're either going to be doing some mirror flexing yourself, or there's going to be some Huey Lewis in the news in your future, and that's
Sharp objects.
So, to be fair, we watched Gone Girl. He looked at me cross-eyed, and then we watched Get Out, and I looked at him cross-eyed.
Wow, you got some fun viewing there.
You're sleeping on the couch.
Lighthearted,
tonight,
fluffy viewing.
I was like, I'm black, he's white, why is he buying me a teacup? He's like, oh, well, you're an Anglophile, you like English. I'm like, why are you buying me a teacup? Ask it out.
All right.
We have both been on this road before.
So I'll go ahead and interject my scenes here, I think. Especially because, well, Kim, you kind of touched on both of them already. I think the business card scene was pretty great. I love that. And I'm not going to necessarily say that I thought the Paul Allen, none of the murders were really my favorite for reasons. But the lead up to it, the talking about the news and all that stuff. And is anyone else really loving the fact that in this movie, the Batman killed the Joker?
Yes.
I love that. Especially because he killed that Joker.
He did. Well,
I mean, if anyone had it coming.
Yes, exactly. And,
well, interesting thing. So about that scene, Bret Easton Ellis, despite not really seeing the story as a movie or not really thinking it needed to be a movie or whatever, he was really, really happy with the film itself. The only thing he didn't like was the fact that during the Paul Allen killing scene that Patrick Bateman moonwalks.
I heard they didn't like that.
Which I thought was hilarious. I love that part.
And that was apparently an improvisation on Christian Bale's part. The and Dane, I know you say that you just cannot stand Family Guy, but I cannot hear Huey Lewis without hearing that one quote from Family Guy. We all miss the news, Meg, but Huey Lewis needs time to create, and we must learn to be patient.
Yeah.
I always think that line, but and I want to make sure
take another moment though to appreciate the fact that Christian Bale was sitting on a sweet moonwalk, and he just decided to bust it out mid take. I respect that. If ever there's a moment to bust out that moonwalk you've been practicing.
There was one other thing that apparently he improvised too that I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I just want to mention one last thing real quick. Now I'll shut up for good until we do our thing. We should mention that the filmmakers behind this, Mary Harron and Guinevere Turner, apparently made a history of doing some really off-the-wall stuff. Mm-hmm. And the other movie I saw by them was the movie The Notorious Betty Page about the 50s pinup model with Gretchen Mol. I just thought that was interesting.
Jacob.
Psycho to that.
Mary Harron, before American Psycho, she did I Shot Andy Warhol, which was that was like her big claim to fame at that point. She hasn't directed that many films, but she's done some TV directing.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out because that was a fun bit of trivia. But anyway.
Well, Kim covered off all the really great scenes. I mean, I think as far as like favorite lines and whatever, like my friends and I could do the whole Huey Lewis speech. I think got to give some extra special shout outs though to Christy. Get down on your knees so that Sabrina can see your asshole. And then
Yes.
followed by Sabrina, don't just stare at it, eat it. I love it.
Quality directing. That's what I like to see. Especially it's quality directing in a film that has quality directing.
Oh yeah.
You gotta love the dual layers of directing there.
Well, and you gotta love the fact that when he gets the girls over, doesn't call them by their real names. He makes up names for them, and he's just sort of presuming to know what they would want to know. Like, do you want to know what I do for a living? Not really, and he tells them anyway. And then, and then Sabrina, she was like, how much did this place cost? That's none of your business, and
The
so
thug
it's just
life
like
shades just slide over onto his.
but he's just leading the whole thing.
Well, it's a control fantasy.
Of course. But you gotta love the fact that that's a moment where a killing could have happened, and yet it didn't, which I think is interesting. And I think part of it is that at that point, his mental state isn't quite unraveling as much, and it's more of, in a way, it's sort of more of an affirmation, because like whenever he feels inadequate relative to Paul Allen or to some other hyper male, he'll usually take him out and then do something else to kind of bolster his self-esteem in a way, and so that kind of gives off that impression versus like when he has Christy back, and then the other girl who actually is played by Guinevere Turner herself, when he has them over, that's when he decides to kill, which I think is interesting. And also, little fun fact, when Guinevere Turner is like, I'm not a lesbian, and she's really drunk, which Guinevere Turner is a lesbian in real life. But
I would say she actually is a lesbian.
well, and this was not in the book, but like Patrick Bateman, he responds with, "Well, you went to Sarah Lawrence for one thing," which Guinevere Turner did go to Sarah Lawrence in real life, so that was a little homage there.
I think I might be a lesbian.
I mean, as the only female, I have dated a couple potential Patrick Batemans, or I dated guys who were Patrick Bateman adjacent. And okay, so
they ever leave a cufflink at your house?
I dated what?
They ever leave a cufflink at your house on accident?
He actually did look like a cross between Christian Bale and Colin Firth, and that's why I dated him. And it was kind of scary now that I think about it. Like, his personality was very Patrick Bateman-like. Like, one of his main complaints about me in our relationship was that I was too bubbly. Like, I was too upbeat. Like, oh, you laugh too much. Yeah, it was like, you laugh too much, and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like, seriously?
A lot of those guys, their strategy is, and I guess it must work at least in the short term, probably not in the long term, but like their strategy is to, like, with whatever woman they're with, especially if it's like a beautiful woman, to actually denigrate her appearance. And I assume it's to try to make them work harder or whatever, or to like puff yourself up by putting them down or whatever. But
well, I mean, he never had anything to say about my appearance. Interestingly enough, even though I'm fat and ugly, he never had said anything about my appearance. It was about my personality. You're too bubbly. You're too happy. Why are you so goddamn happy? I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, it's that same pathology is what I'm getting at. It's like that in order to like get them to like you, you put them down and you make yourself look better, and that if they're like a willing victim or participant or whatever, then that'll make them want to be around the person who's seen as better or whatever.
And the irony
so
is
who-
that if he had put down my appearance, that would have had the intended whatever. But when he put down my personality, I'm like, motherfucker, I'm like, why am I so bubbly? Are we not living in a post 9/11 society? Fuck you.
So who
Yeah,
still needs to give
especially
their
when-
favorites?
when we're going to
I
have
don't-
to deal with society afterwards, where we've got where we're not sure whether we got to stay 6 feet away from you, and people are going like, you know,
There's no
as
law
you-
on the planet that can keep me 6 feet from you, Dave.
So actually, I think it's Dustin and
haven't-
myself
I
that
haven't-
are left.
I'll
I haven't
deal
I haven't
with
gone
you.
yet. Yeah,
Right?
I think.
Right.
You're
I
my
think my-
Felicia, baby.
I think my favorite scene. It's hard to pick just one. I think one of the scenes I like just because of the music is the studio scene. Like that song fits the mood of that scene so perfectly, where he doesn't care about them. He's just totally focused on checking himself out in the mirror, and it's so like creepy.
Yes.
But I think my favorite scene is probably the ending monologue, where he just kind of lays out how hopeless his situation is, and well,
This
how
confession
nothing
is
matters.
nothing.
It's basically a monologue to nihilism, and I really enjoy that speech.
I
So,
think one of
Yes.
my favorite scenes is when Gene is over and he's invited her over, and he opens up the fridge, and there's a fucking head in the fridge, and he closes it back up.
Sorbet.
And I'm trying to think. Okay, who did he kill before him or whatnot?
well, he
model.
kills he kills a lot of
Allegedly,
people.
remember, it might all be in his head.
Well, he kills a lot of people off camera, like in the book.
Yeah. Well, and that's
There's all
that
kinds of stuff that
evokes-
happens in the book that we don't see. Like there's a scene where he's chased through. There's a scene where a park bench comes to life and chases him through Central Park.
That's
There's a scene
right.
where he imagines that there's a Cheerio dictating the morning news. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff in the book.
Wait, that's not what's
He
happening?
really he really loses it there.
No.
Which I mean, yeah, it does evoke the fact that in his world that it's just a part of his life that is just, like Tuesday or going to the grocery store or something.
And,
Kind of makes you wonder. We were talking the other day about Terry Gilliam. Imagine what he would have done with this.
Oh man.
And I guess the other one was when Christy ends up like running down the hallway and finding all those bodies in the closet and shit like that, and she and it's like you didn't even realize those bodies were there.
Well, she's only
You know.
seen like the 2 rooms. I mean, he's not giving her a tour of
She probably
the
would have
murder.
smelled him.
3, actually, the living room,
Good point.
the bedroom, and the bathroom. So I guess that counts.
He got his
Alright.
red room in there.
Is it your turn,
Well-
Brandon?
Yeah, I actually, my favorite scene is the business card scene because it's very telling as to his personality, and it displays a lot of it right then and there. But another one that I thought was pretty good that hasn't been mentioned, but I think once, and that was at the very beginning of our discussion, was the limousine ride. That they had over, where he's talking to his supposed fiance, and just that, where of course as it has been pointed out, the whole like, why don't you quit work, was like, then I wouldn't belong. But there were other little cues, and that also kind of shows how he is and who he is as a person trying to function in society, as somebody who doesn't quite understand how other people really think and feel. He just has to, he's coming at it from an outsider's perspective.
In
Which-
the novel,
That's great.
did Reese Witherspoon's character Evelyn was she in fact actually cheating in the novel?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and
I mean,
she
that's
was,
kinda
and
like
also
a given.
Yeah, there's a given, and Patrick Bateman was cheating with Courtney Rawlinson, her closest friend, and it was just kind of a matter of course. Which, you know, one thing that I love about, well, the book and the movie, they both do this. It's well, not only do people mistake people for other people who all look the same, but also they will mishear things that he says that are that Patrick Bateman says that are
They're kind of
very
half paying attention to him most of the time.
exactly. Well, and
Flat out admits to committing
they're
crimes.
otherwise very incriminating things, but they
Yeah.
mishear him because they're not really listening. Like he says he's in murders and executions, but the girl
Mergers and
hears it as
acquisitions,
mergers
yeah.
and acquisitions.
Yeah.
Or
That was
or
Here's
he'll
the thing.
or,
Okay,
or
so
he'll
I
say
have actually, I mean, as someone here, and Brandon and Jacob, you have too, as people here who have actually hung around those kind of fucking people, it's all show.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's about like who has the biggest fucking ring and who
Yeah.
has the whose fiance has the nicest job or who has the nicest car. Like, oh, this is gonna
Yeah.
sound so shitty, but you know, fuck it.
My
You're my
dick
husband.
is better than yours.
Well,
Kind
not
of,
even that. Like that's minor. But like when Brandon and I, when we first got engaged, you know, one of the girls I worked with, the first thing out of her fucking mouth, that fucking cunt, excuse my language, was, "Oh my god, let's see the ring." So I showed off, and she's like, "Oh."
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
And later on, I found out that she had some stuff to say about the ring, that it wasn't that big. I was expecting more because Kim's so bougie acting. Okay, so she got engaged not too long after we did. And now that hoe was divorced.
Of course.
And Brandon and I are celebrating our 5-year wedding anniversary. I'm like, So tell me again
If I
about your
ever-
ring and how
If I
big
ever
your fucking
propose-
engagement ring was, hoe. And it was,
If I ever
again, it's
propose
even...
to a woman, most likely Dave, I'm going to
See-
propose
see-
with one of those Yu-Gi-Oh like card wings.
Oh
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Actually,
that's-
Mo, I'm going to tell you right
People
now.
have done
because
that. You know that,
with
right?
Jacob, you will have a very
I do.
certain and very devoted and loyal fiance with Jacob. Nothing against you, Dave, because you got a woman. I know you got a woman.
Don't
Jacob
you
is
insult
single.
my man, okay?
Mm.
I'm gonna steal him from that girl, okay? He's gonna bring me chicken every night.
Okay, this
David's
discussion's
over
going
here
off
like-
the rails now.
Like,
But
I
you
You guys
gotta-
gonna
gotta-
have to find me
What would you
DVDs
like
at
now?
half price books because we
So,
don't got that shit over here.
We're nowhere near the rails. Who are we kidding?
Yeah. You were talking about the music before
Yes.
we got into favorite scenes
Oh.
part. So let's
This has
talk
a
about
lot.
that.
This has a really iconic
we'll-
'80s soundtrack. Like
Oh yeah.
the only thing missing from the book, because the music is important in the book, they were able to get most of the songs they mentioned. They weren't able to get the Talking Heads on board, so they couldn't use any
Yeah.
Talking
What?
Heads songs.
Bummer.
Oh man, Psycho Killer would have
That's
fit perfectly.
bummer.
And
And
then
they just
the
license it out to every other thing now. So
I did
it's-
read that basically Whitney Houston's people just told them to go to hell.
to shove off. So yeah, they have an instrumental version of it instead in the movie. But well, what's interesting about it is that the movie itself has like a who's who of iconic '80s pop songs like "Walking on Sunshine" and
I love them.
Simply Irresistible" and "Hip to Be Square." All this stuff.
Truth
If
Aid.
the actual soundtrack. It has a lot of songs that are in the movie, but it does not have a lot of the ones that you would want there to be on there. And if anything, the actual soundtrack that was released, if anything, it's more like a collection of songs that fans of the movie would like, rather than songs that were necessarily in the film, even though there are quite a few that were.
Yeah, I had to customize it by adding tracks from different
Yeah.
places.
Well,
Exactly.
Apparently,
I
from what I understood,
guys,
they did.
I feel like this goddamn movie should have been the main show tonight. And
Yeah,
not the
we
pre-show.
need to get to the other one soon. But I
Yeah.
did read that Huey Lewis would not allow them to use their stuff, and
On the
they had
soundtrack, yeah.
they apparently printed a run and had to scrap it, but a few of them leaked out into the wild.
Yeah.
So if you've got that original pressing, it's like a collector's thing.
Oh, I know.
Dave,
And that's what was so weird about it, was that they let him use it in the movie, but they weren't
They
keen on the
boxed
soundtrack. Well, but then the funny part is that for Funny or Die, they did a parody of the Huey Lewis in the News scene where the actual Huey Lewis plays Patrick Bateman and Weird Al, yes, he plays Paul Allen, and
Oh God.
it's so funny because
Great.
well, and the impetus for Huey Lewis killing Weird Al is try parodying one of my songs now, you fucking stupid bastard. And because Weird Al parodied "I Want a New Drug" and he made it
Yeah.
"I Want a New Duck."
Okay. So okay, Dave.
Yeah.
Given the fact that this movie obviously has some opinions and more to be discussed, can we do this as a part 2 at a later date? Because I know y'all have a later
We
show.
could definitely do a part 2
Well, there's
continuation on maybe Brandon's channel at the start of next week. Maybe.
well,
Nope,
this is
we got
I know you got
based
the
on-
vampire.
this is a pretty deep movie. I mean, we could go
It is.
for hours into the philosophy
Yeah.
of it.
Well,
I actually,
that's why I thought
I
it was
actually
the
have a
main
20
show
I
because
have a
there's so much
20-page
to
essay about it
dissect.
that I've never been able to read because it's so long.
It's
It's called the unfilmable
and
narrative.
All right.
all y'all actually gonna be up kind of early tomorrow morning. So
Yeah, I
I
know.
know I got Vampire Hunter. So like, let's guys. I hate to be mummy. I hate to be mummy or nanny. Let's wrap this motherfucking shit up.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why I thought it was the main show because there's so much to talk about with it.
Well, any case, I know that we try to not do too much, but I know that some of y'all will not be on the next show. So, I know, for instance, Kim, you have a channel. Would you like to go ahead and talk about that real quick as your outro?
Well, my YouTube channel is Kim Creates Stuff. That's my channel name at the moment. And if all things go well this week with our renovations of our house, I'll be able to access my stuff so I can film my video about me talking about the book by Clive Barker, The Hellbound Heart, while putting on my makeup and doing
Nice.
a scary look. Or as scary as it can be for a female, not special effects, but just regular makeup look. And I'm a little upset right now because I was supposed to film that this past weekend, and I couldn't reach my stuff, namely my makeup collection and other things. And I still can't at the moment. I'm a little upset about that. So hopefully by this weekend I can do that.
Awesome.
Yay.
Let's agree to do the rest of our outros at the end of the next session here.
I know Dane and Dustin aren't going to be coming on with us for those, so.
Yeah,
So-
well, I'll say my bit really fast. I'm Dane Kyle, aka Dane Damrung on YouTube. I'm on a channel called Indie Horror Film Creative where I host a show called Blu-ray Views. Also a filmmaker. I've got several things that have come out recently, like For We Are Many through Hex Media, and most recently Faces of Fear through Wild Eye Releasing. Other things are on their way. I'm going to be shooting something hopefully in the winter for inclusion in another anthology. Yeah, check out Indie Horror Film Creative for unboxings of Blu-rays and different movie topics. And I am going to try to get my first commentary in for No Money Film School to try to help teach them youngins about the magic of filmmaking and the craft of filmmaking without the financial bar to entry.
Alrighty. And Dustin?
Who, me?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, the guy in the mask.
Oh, well, I'm Dustin. I'm a horror collector living here in Milwaukee. I find stuff and shit off on my Instagram, The Crypt of Horrors, and my YouTube channel, The Crypt of Horrors. Lately, I've been doing 31 Days of Halloween, so I watch at least one movie a day, and I post it on my Instagram. So go follow me there and check that out. It's been pretty fun, actually, getting through at least one movie a day. as opposed to my normal rate of 1 or less. I've been doing like 2 or 3, so it's been pretty crazy. I'm almost all the way through the Friday the 13th set. It's kind of
Nice.
yeah, and yeah, I just do that while I go to school here in Milwaukee. So
All
All
right.
right.
I'm going to bounce.
Yeah, I'm
All
gonna
right.
bounce too. Night, everyone.
There you go.
Alrighty.
Nice.
And
Bye,
notes, everyone.
Later, Cam. Stay away from those cufflinks, motherfuckers. They'll do you.